Hey everyone, good morning to you, good evening. Hope you're all well. My name is Heng. Today is Saturday the 5th of April here in the Gold Coast of Queensland. It's April 4th back in California. We're gathered together again today to continue our storytelling of the amazing episodes 200 episodes in the life of Venerable Master Xuyun, Empty Cloud. Hope that you're looking forward. We got a kind of a turning point in the arc of his life. This is I'll explain that as we get underway. But he's returned to being a mountain hermit again, as he began. Before he was even a monk, he preferred to live out in the wilderness. And with the things going on in China and the experiences that he has been having recently in the year 1900 and beyond, he has now chosen again to return to nature, to caves in the mountains. So that's what we'll be finding out about for the next several episodes. Okay, it is time now to do a Dharma request, and Zhang Man from Anhui is going to be our Dharma requester today. So let me ring the bell 3 times, invite you all to join me in making 3 half bows, and then Zhang Man will be the Dharma requester. Let's see here. Okay. All right, here we go. 一问讯 and 再问讯 second bow 三问讯好张妈妈你愿意请法现在可以开始
恭请大德圣听为此法会及一切众生请众妙法会教导我们如何了生脱死离苦得乐速证无生。
Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye ulahadi samyao samputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samyao samputoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Okay, thank you so much for the Dharma request. I would like to remind people that if you would like to listen to my English words translated into Mandarin Chinese, please go to the, let me say this in Chinese. 如果各位你们想听我所讲的英语，有很流利的翻译普通话，就可以在你们的软件的控制板的右下角有个地球那里，就按到那儿就可以听到中文。And also, we have a Vietnamese translation of our dedicated volunteers who take their time to translate my English words into Vietnamese. Look to the chat box. There's a link that'll take you to the Vietnamese translation. Further, if, like our Dharma requesters today, if you'd like to do the Dharma request and get all the merit and virtue from making it possible for others to hear the lecture, that's your gongda. It's a great way to cultivate. You can do that, and if you can only do one language, we will help you to fill in the other language. So that's also in the chat box. Okay, let's see here. We are going to move right along to the acknowledgement of country. We respectfully acknowledge the Kombu-Meri people of the Ugambi language region as traditional storytellers and custodians of the land where the monastery is located. So we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. 就说我们恭敬地承认Ugambi语族的孔布马里人，他们是我们寺院所在地的传统续学者和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长者们致敬，并且向所有从来没有放弃主权的第一民族的原住民致敬。All right. Bells sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000界内，佛法扬万亿国中，共训其法界和平，利益报贪恼厚德。Alrighty. I have been getting some lovely feedback from folks worldwide who are very interested in Master Empty Cloud, and it's super refreshing to realize that the incredible dedication, the commitment to a life of cultivation of our grand teacher is something that people share north, south, east, west. And there are, we've heard stories from people who, when they saw Master Empty Cloud's face, and the picture on your screen right now, that's my desktop, this is one of those moments when he is a hermit. You can tell because of the length of his hair and his beard. He hasn't shaved his head for months on end. He's got long hair, and he's got a long goatee. So monks who are living out in seclusion, yin shi, right? Yin shi, right? They're allowed in the deportment of monks, the way monks can look. We're allowed to grow our hair long. You can also see what has he got on his lap. He's got a half round of bamboo that's been cut, sliced in half, and then polished. And people would wonder, what in the world is that? And this is used by meditators in hot climates. If the weather is extremely hot, ordinarily we put the left hand palm up on our heels of our 2 feet in full lotus, and then the right hand on top of the left hand, and the thumbs joined together on top. That's the standard. But when you're sitting in summer weather or in hot climate, your hands get hot and it becomes uncomfortable. So you're allowed to put your hands on half around a bamboo, which tong feng, it allows the wind to circulate, and you don't overheat. So that's a Chan accessory that only people who have tried it would know why you've got that piece of bamboo. Interestingly enough, his robe, though, that's a cold weather robe. So that's a robe that you wear when it's really cold out. So not quite clear. Let's see. I didn't look at the caption here. 虚云老和尚法相96岁时所设今年以98岁以参看第3版及判音台播音台. Okay. So this is Master Empty Cloud. He is 96 years old when the picture was taken. So we can actually track that and know where he was when he was 96 years old. So you also notice he's got 9 fingers. That's the finger that he burned off. We heard that episode just recently. All right. Now, as I promised, let me say, as I mentioned earlier, we've been hearing a lot about the turmoil in China in the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century. The year 1900 is where we are in the chronology, and he is 60 years old. So he's actually the first half of his life. At age 60, he's only halfway along. So during that time in China, extremely politically and socially turbulent. There's a civil war going on. And I won't go into the details. We've talked about it for 3 weeks now. But it's China has pretty much had it with the West. They've had enough of Western imperial countries coming along and waging war, like the Opium War, and Christianity coming in and creating other kinds of turmoil, backed up by Western military powers sailing their gunboats up the Changjiang, up the Yangtze River. So the Boxers were a patriotic movement originating essentially in Shandong province, with young men saying, we support the Qing government, the Qing dynasty. We want to rid China of foreigners and their influence, particularly Christianity. So that's kind of how it began. And this movement was preceded by what? By famine. There were in the 30 years before 1900, China had experienced years of no rain. And when there's no rain, that means there's no food. And so famine and starvation had further destabilized China. And this was preceded by the Opium War, there were 2 Opium Wars where colonial powers were forcing China to consume opium grown in India. And the Chinese finally understood this was not, originally, I'm not going to outline the Opium War, but this extremely addictive drug was promoted as good for you, as strengthening and healthy, when in fact it was none of the above, none of those things. So all of these crises in the 19th century led to China being vulnerable to civil strife. So the Boxers tried to take matters in their own hands, and in the process, they managed to kill a Japanese diplomat and German diplomats, and also to put Chinese Christians at physical risk. So the word went out to Europe and to the US that Chinese Christians needed support and Chinese missionaries, etc. So the 8 root armies from 8 different countries came into China to try to, the images that we saw were they carved up China like a pie. And the Russians, the Italians, the Germans, the French, the Americans, the Japanese all took pieces of it. That was kind of the image. So at this point, because the emperor was not the power holder, his mother was instead. This was Cixi Taiho, Empress Dowager Cixi. So there was no organized resistance to all of this external energy coming into China, military energy. And that she also was unable to suppress the Boxers. And there was this big debate, are the Boxers patriots or are they rebels? So Master Empty Cloud, this is how our story comes in. He was invited to protect the empress and the imperial family who fled Beijing to the west, to Chang'an. And it was a very difficult time for all concerned. And being a patriot and someone widely recognized as the monk who had the mojo, he was the one who was supposed to be able to influence the Tianlong Babu. They asked him to pray for rain. When the imperial family made it out to the west, what did they discover? They discovered the conditions of famine, to the point where people were eating things they shouldn't have been eating. They asked Master Empty Cloud to please pray for rain. The idea being that a monk with real virtue could influence the dragons to let the rain fall. So the ceremony was concluded, and at that point, Master Empty Cloud said, "That's it. I'm done. I've done my bit. I'm going to retire to Zhongnan Mountain." That's where we find today's story. So here was the praying for rain, and here we are. Okay, it is Jiawutai Shizi Yan, staying in Lion Cavern at Jiawutai Mountain, which is one of the peaks in Zhongnanshan. Zhongnanshan is not a mountain, it's a mountain range. It actually covers like 60 miles. That is all considered to be Zhongnanshan. We're going to take a look at it in just a minute. So it's 1900, he's 61 years old. Okay, are we ready? Here we go. 10月上终南山，甲午台狮子岩，睫毛地幽静，为度外扰迹，改号虚云，山法水，化剂血为饮，种野菜为食。山中看本唱住坡石山，妙莲住关帝庙，道明住无华洞，妙园修园青山，奋住后山。Okay. In the 10th lunar month, the master climbed Zhongnan Mountains to live in the wilds and stayed at the Lion Cavern of Jiawutai Mountain. It's a cave, Lion's Cave. The area was remote, oh boy, is it ever, and tranquil. And to avoid the annoyance of visitors, the master changed his name to Xuyun. Before that, it was Deqing. Since there was no water on the mountain, he melted snow to drink and gathered wild plants to eat. Dharma Master Bunchang, Original Brilliance, was living nearby on Broken Rock Mountain. Dharma Master Miaolian, Wonderful Lotus, lived at Guandi Temple. Dharma Master Daoming, bright, the light of the Tao, stayed at Wuhua, Five Flowers Cave. Also, Masters Miaoyuan, Xiuyuan, and Qingshan lived in different parts of the mountain. Okay. Here's the picture. Here's the monk standing on mountainous terrain, steep cliffs, waterfalls, clouds, pine trees. Perfect for hermits. Whoa, this is hermit's heaven indeed. Okay, Shifu's verse. 万里中南引圣贤，百千比丘入长安。恭敬更名举师动，专心致志苦修参。Okay. Worthy sages live sequestered 10,000 miles away on Zhongnan, while hundreds of thousands of bhikshus gathered together in Chang'an. The master changed his name and took up residence in the Lion Cavern. With single-minded concentration, he practiced austerities and dhyana meditation. It's a great poem, right? This really tells the story. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, our earliest encounters with Master Empty Cloud, before he became a monk, he lived as a hermit. He had real success as a hermit. He was eating just what he could gather, pine nuts and bark of trees, drinking water that he dipped up with his hands from the streams. And it's said that at this time he was so, his gong fu had advanced to the point that his eyes lit up. They said that his eyes were actually shed light. And his hair, of course, he never saw a comb. He wasn't a monk, he didn't cut his hair. So he looked more like an immortal than he did a human. Kind of scary, for the truth be told. And he could run really fast. So, do we have anything to compare in the West? We mentioned before the shamans of Carlos Castaneda wrote about Don Juan Gennaro, the Mexican shaman who could turn into a crow. He was actually a shapeshifter. But in his human form, he looked human plus. He looked like a character out of a manga, maybe out of a Japanese comic book. Or from somebody from a Ming Dynasty novel of a hermit in the wild. Master Empty Cloud really played the part of a mountain hermit, for sure. And after he came down, a monk saw him and told him that if he didn't change his ways, he was going to become xianren, 一个人字边一个山, which is to say a rishi in Sanskrit, RSI, rishi, which is like an immortal who hangs on to his body. For sure, they live a long time, but they're not liberated. They're just long-lived. And luckily, a monk saw Master Empty Cloud and challenged him and said, okay, that's good. What do you want to hang on to your stinking body for? You know it's going to go at some point. Why don't you learn to cultivate your mind? So with that challenge, the yin yuan, his roots came ripe. They say his faculties matured, and he came down into the monastery and started to perform, learn the rules of a monk, Then he went through a whole series of skills that are important in society. For example, he started to grow vegetables. He became the cai tou. He grew the cabbages, and he grew the greens, and he grew the sweet potatoes, and served in that way. Then he set down his hoe and his shovel and his wheelbarrow, and he went into the monastery, and he became the verger. He became the attendant who served the food that others cooked to all the monks every day at lunch. So this is another set of jobs that he took on, and gradually socializing himself, gradually abandoning the life of the solitary hermit in the woods, and now he moved into the community, started to serve that way. Then somebody, another monk, found him and said, "That's great, you've got blessings, but you know what? You don't have any wisdom. You don't know any Dharma. So why don't you start to cultivate the Buddha Dharma? That's what you really want. That's where the good stuff is. You can have blessings, but you don't have wisdom, you're still not there." So Master Empty Cloud again listened to him and started to attend sutra lectures. He started to study and increased his knowledge of the Dharma. So that's another phase, another chapter of his life where he, instead of mortifying the body, he started to discipline his mind. So think about how, as a cultivator of the way, Master Hua would always say, "你们修道的人," he would say, all of you cultivators of the way, all of you who follow the Dharma. Master Empty Cloud now started to study how to explain sutras, how to make commentaries, and how to explain the Dharma as well. So his wisdom started to increase daily. Then at a certain point, he started his pilgrimage, and that's in our 200 stories, 36 of them had to do with 3 steps, 1 bow. Then he made it to Wutaishan after having nearly died twice and being rescued by Manjushri. We all remember those incredible, incredible stories. Then after arriving at Wutaishan, he attended a Chan session. He saw the Buddha's lights at Wutai. He then started to travel. And we've got this kind of the travelogue of Master Empty Cloud's visits to Tibet, to all of the incredible Buddhist sites in Sichuan province, and then all the way down to Burma, to Myanmar, and then up through Yunnan and Jizushan and all of the incredible Buddhist relics of the southwest of China. And then he traveled on up through the center of China, made it back to, and seeing all of the sites that he explained, that he told us about as he traveled. And now he caught up, the events of China caught up to him. And his focus turns to China in turmoil, the Civil War, the 1900. He followed the imperial entourage as they escaped Beijing to the west, through the Great Wall, and out to the Wild Goose Gate, and that was where he. Let's see. It was. Where was it? It was Wolongsi. He was out at Sleeping Dragon Monastery, where the governor invited him to please offer the ceremony for praying for rain. So at this point, Master Empty Cloud said, monks take vows, they take precepts to protect themselves in times of chaos. so that people can find in the monks and nuns a refuge from catastrophes that doesn't move, it doesn't shift as governments come and go and as people go to war and then make peace. The monks are supposed to be refuges from turmoil and chaos. So he says, at this point, how does it go? 共以消烦甚迁去. So, because of the clamor and the din, the master secretly left. So one day they went to make offerings to Master Empty Cloud, and he wasn't there anymore. He had gone to where? He had gone to Zhongnanshan. Here is Zhongnanshan. So where are we? There. Here's China. Here's Taiwan. Here's Zhongnanshan, right there, Zhongnan Mountain. Now, if you, where is Beijing? Beijing is up here. Here is Shandong. This is where the Boxer Rebellion began, up in Shandong. Here is, here's Shijiazhuang. Taiyuan is here. Wutaishan, here's Hebei, here's Beijing, right there. So you can see Zhongnanshan is far from Beijing, far from Tianjin. Shanghai is over here. Shanghai is on the east coast. Hangzhou is down here. So Zhongnanshan is close to what city? It's close to Xi'an. Xi'an is, at the time, in the Tang Dynasty, was known as Chang'an. So the royal family, the imperial family, traveled escaped for their lives from Beijing all the way through. Wutaishan is here, 5 peaks, all the way down to Xi'an down here. Now, during the Tang Dynasty, Chang'an was the capital city. So it was the start of the Silk Road. I'm going to show you. Here it is, Xi'an right there. This is where Master Xuanzang began his journey to India back in the Tang Dynasty. So the thing about Xi'an, it's a very Buddhist place, and has, if you go to the terracotta soldiers, everybody has seen, identifying them with China. That's where the emperor left them as for his tombs, just outside of Xi'an. But for monks, this entire range of mountains is known as the Zhongnan Range, Zhongnanshan. And historically, this is where hermits come when they want to live alone, when they want to leave behind the turmoil of armies going to war and foreign powers invading and just different houses competing to be the next emperor. When the emperor gets corrupt, the next one comes along, right? Monks would always avoid the big city, the capital city at that time, and go into the mountains. You can see how rugged this is. These mountains are just incredibly remote. They are famous for having leopards, bao, shan bao. There are all kinds of birds and creatures and snakes, all kinds of critters out in the Zhongnan Mountains. And the thing is, if you can take it, if you can stand the austerity, the difficulties of living in the mountains, it's beautiful. There's just enough topsoil to grow basic vegetables. There's seasonal rain. You can find springs coming out of the mountains, and nobody's going to bother you. Nobody goes out there to give you trouble. So notice the biography says Master Empty Cloud changed his name. He took on the name Xuyun at that point. He had been Deqing up till then. Here is the Zhongnan Forest Park. Let's see if we can get some. Don't know if we got any images there. Zhongnan Mountain Forest Park. Look at how rugged. Let's see. Those residences. This is okay. This must be. Where are we? Maybe this has been developed recently. But when you don't see, this is Xi'an. You don't. That's just where you. That's the kickoff into the mountains, because the mountains are really rugged, really, really rugged. So, okay, now I want to see here. There we go. I've told my stories about Zhongnanshan before, but I think since we're looking from here for the next 4 or 5 incredible episodes, Master Empty Cloud is experiencing the life of a hermit. And oh my goodness, it's tough to live on Zhongnanshan. So let me share my experiences there. For those of you who've heard it before, maybe maybe some more memories will pop up, because it was memorable, to say the least. In 1989, traveling out to Wutashan and to Umeishan, we got an invitation to go to Xi'an. And an elderly gentleman, Mr. Bai Lao Xiansheng, who was had been the kind of the center for, he had been the head of Buddhist, was it the Zongjiaoju, a retired religion, the head of the religion department retired for Shanxi province. And so he heard that there were monks from Wanfocheng coming out, and he said, I'd be happy, I have a car, would you like to see Zhongnanshan? And we said, ooh, boy, oh boy, of course. So he drove us to the trailhead in a Jeep. It was one of those Jeeps for multiple seats. So there was, in our delegation, there was, I think, 5 of us. So he parked at the trailhead, and he said, I'll take you into Jingye Si, Pure Karma Monastery, Jingye Si. And he told us the backstory as we climbed over boulders. It was, I had trouble with getting in there with my monk shoes, because monk shoes are, the Lohanxie are not really good for climbing over boulders. But there we were. So he said, what happened, Jingye Si during the Cultural Revolution was pretty much destroyed. The Red Guards tried to go out there, but because it was so rugged, it was a poor temple to begin with, so there wasn't much to destroy. So they tried to burn it, but it didn't burn, and so they left it alone after a couple attempts to destroy it. They didn't succeed because there was a good abbot who kept the Dharma alive, even though there was only 3 or 4 monks living at Jingye Si. He said, but this abbot, what followed, the Red Guards were only one problem of the Cultural Revolution. It was a time of major lawlessness. And so the abbot was out on the trail one day, and he discovered some hooligans, some bandits, who were stripping trees of their bark to sell as herbs. The abbot tried to stop them, and they killed him, said Mr. Bai. He said, so now, ordinarily, if that was the end of the story, I couldn't take you out here. I wouldn't be allowed to show anybody this. It's not a good story. He said, but recently, there have been young monks from Shaolin Monastery, who have been sent by the Fojiao Xiehui to protect Jingye Si. He said, I know them, and they would love to meet you. He says, so that's where I'm taking. We said, oh, wow, it's exciting. So we hiked probably 4 or 5 miles in from the trail and came around the corner, and here was Jingye Si, Pure Karma Monastery. And sure enough, there were 5 young monks, all in their mid-20s. I think the oldest one might have been 30. And they introduced their leader, who bowed to us, we bowed to him. And interestingly enough, this young monk spoke pretty fair English. We said, wow, how did you learn your English? He says, we had it at Shaolin Si, we had a crystal radio. I listened to the BBC. And sure enough, his English had a British accent. So he said, we've heard about City of 10,000 Buddhas, and of course, Master Xuyun Hua, we're very glad to meet you. And so what did they do? They offered us tea as hosting guests. The problem was they were so poor there that they had no tea leaves. So they took leaves that fell off the trees. They harvested their own tea from trees and turned it into, and poured it in hot water, and we drank tea gathered from the local tree leaves because there was no proper tea available to them. These monks were caretakers. He said the Fojiao, the Buddhist Association, figures nobody's going to mess with Shaolin monks. So we are Dharma protectors of the monastery until they can get a proper Dharma. We are Wu Sung, we are not Fa Sung, we're not Dharma Sanghans, we are martial Sanghans, come to protect Jingye Si. So he said, wow, that's really exciting. And he said, yeah, so glad you could come. He said, now that you're here, we want to tell you some stories. And he said, how I mentioned that they said that I was the 3 Steps 1 Bow monk, and Marty, the Dharma protector, was here. And so he said, well, we know about that. We've actually read your book. He said the manuscript copy. And he said, so we know that we can tell you the actual stories about our experience here. And we said, yeah, please do. So he said, the Jingye Si is a famous old monastery. And one of the stories about it was, among the various legends of Jingye Si was that there's a special Dharma protector here, which is a Da Mang She. There is a Mahoraga, Moha Luo Qie, in the Gods and Dragons and Eightfold Pantheon, Tianlong Babu. There is the great snakes, the pythons. And when we found the Jingye Shan Zhi, the gazetteer, the historical records that are kept by every monastery, and they mentioned back in the Tang Dynasty, this Da Mangshe, this giant python, would appear periodically to the monks in times of trouble to protect Jingye Si. And several times the monastery would burn and be rebuilt, and the Mangshe would show up again to kind of check things out. And he said, we arrived after we got the word from Fojiao Xiehui that Jingye Si needed protection. We were at Shaolin Si in Henan, and so we came, and we'd arrived 1 week. We were just getting settled in here when one day we were meditating here in the courtyard, and we looked up to see this huge python I mean, it was so big that it stood up on it. You know, snakes can raise up on their bellies, and it was at eye level. It was that big. It was 12 feet or more, a huge python, and because we had heard these stories about Jingye Si, we said, let's all bow to the Buddhas together. We didn't bow to the snake. On behalf of the snake, we all turned to the Buddha image, which we had set back up. The Buddha had been toppled over. We set the Buddha up, and we all bowed on behalf of the snake to the Buddha. And the snake looked at each one of us, all 5 of the monks, one by one by one. It looked at us, and then it sat back down onto the ground and slithered away. And we very much had the feeling that we had passed the test somehow. So nobody was allowed to be afraid, and in fact, we bowed to the Buddha on behalf of the snake. So here it was again. After appearing in the Tang Dynasty records, sure enough, we met the snake. So he says, do you believe it or not? 你们信不信? And we're like, okay, sure. So then he said, follow us. And he took us out. Now I know I've told this story before, not long ago, but it really bears repeating. One of the qualities of Zhongnanshan is its presence, the presence of Wang Wei. Wang Wei is famous poet, painter of the Tang Dynasty. He was born in 699, and he was born in Xi'an, and he is one of China's most famous poets. His poetry is just superb, and his painting equally so. He was brought into the government to serve, and then he was exiled during the war. Anlushan Rebellion happened while he was there. Here's some of his landscape paintings, super dynamic. And here is one of his poems. "中岁颇好道，晚家南山水。信来梅珠往，盛世空自知。醒到水中处，坐看云起时。偶然知林扫，谈笑无欢喜." Right? In my middle years, I came to love the way. And later on, I made my home by the border of Zhongnan Mountain. When I feel like it, I head out alone and really enjoy my time by myself. These are the famous lines. Travel down to the place where the stream burbles, sit down and wait for the clouds to rise up. Sometimes I meet my old neighbors in the woods, and we just chat and laugh. We don't pay attention to when it's time to go home, right? This Stephen Owen translated this. His translation needs help. So, anyway, so wonderful poem, right? This line is really famous. 醒到水中处, walk to where the spring arises, then sit down and wait for the clouds to rise up. This is truly the spirit of somebody at ease, who has retired from the things of the world. Sometimes we meet the old man of the mountains, and we just chat and laugh. We don't care when it's time to go home. Nobody cares when it's time to go home. So, Wang Wei. All right. So back to my story. So the monk says, "Come with us," he says. Okay, 读不是出. Okay, thank you, Jiangxi. So he says, "Can you climb?" And we're like, give us an example. What do you mean by climbing? He says, up there. So he points up, and way up, like maybe 100 yards, he says, you see that there's a hole up there? He says, I have to point it out to you. And we go, yeah? He says, there's a path, don't worry. So he starts leading us up, and we're suddenly, we're wearing our robes and our ease and things, and we're sweating and just kind of really clinging to the side of the mountain. But we all made it. We all made it up to this cave, and there's a cave, and we go inside, and he says, follow me. And we squeeze through a doorway that kind of, you wouldn't know it was there. And another room opens up, and he says, what do you think this is? We look, and here's stone, they're called steles, S-T-E-L-E, bei, right? Chinese, they're called a bei, shi bei. He says, can you read it? And barely, kind of like one character out of three, and he says, you know who wrote this? He said, this is Wang Wei's stele. That's Wang Wei's hand. He wrote the poem, and then he carved it onto the stone. He said, you're looking at a Tang Dynasty stele. Only because it was so hard to get up there, and you wouldn't, even if you found the first cave, you wouldn't know the second cave. He said that's why it survived. It survived the Cultural Revolution, and he said scholars don't know about this. He said we're not telling them. So they have a Wang Wei actual Tang Dynasty from the 7th century, 8th century. Just incredible relics, and we're looking at this and looking at the monk, and who is this guy? So we made it back down the mountain face, the cliff face, and he said, now come over here. He pointed up to one of the peaks, one of the tallest mountain peaks in the area, and he said, up there, he said, right now there's a bhikshuni, and she explains the Vajra Sutra, Jinggang Jing, and if you're tough, if you can take it, she'll let you listen in. But if you don't have what it takes, you'll never find her or her assembly. She says, yes, just like that. He says, you have to be tough enough to be able to, because there's nothing to eat up there. There's barely enough water. But if you're special and you're really sincere, she'll let you listen in while she explains the Jinggang Jing. And he said, what is it about this bhikshuni? He said, well, she got struggled against during the Cultural Revolution, and they knocked all her teeth out just in beating her, and then her teeth grew back, he said. She's very special. We're like, okay, all right. So teeth don't grow back, but she grew another set of teeth, and now she's explaining the Jinggang Jing. So he said, we had one of our monks who tried to go up there, and he couldn't find her. So you have to have special yin yuan to be able to listen to this bhikshuni's experiencing the Jinggang Jing. So now, he told us one more thing that is in the realm of, how's that again? So he said, Zhongnanshan is not a mountain, it's a mountain range. And he said, there is a story that Jia She Fo, Kasyapa Buddha, who is among the 7 Tathagatas, in line, he's a prior Buddha to Shakyamuni Buddha. He left a Lü Zang, a Vinaya Pitaka, a Vinaya series of teachings on the Vinaya, in a cave in Zhongnanshan that's guarded by Pracheka Buddhas, Bijifo. And the time hasn't come for that to emerge, he said. But the legend is that at a certain point, that those Pracheka Buddhas know when, they will open the cave and it will be discovered, a Vinaya. So what is that? Who cares about that? That's the rules for creating and sustaining the Sangha. So the Dharma will get new life when the Vinaya Pitaka left by Kashyapa Buddha comes out. So where else do we have a story sort of like that? That's Jizu Shan with Maitreya, right? Maitreya is supposed to be our Mahakashyapa. It's Jizu Shan is who? Mahakashyapa, right? Is there in the mountain and waiting for the time to come. So here's a similar kind of story. Okay, so those are my personal experiences at Zhongnanshan, and we have in months, maybe it was even last year, Ted Berger released a new film called The Mountain Path, and it was a reissue of his earlier film called Amongst White Clouds, where he went to Zhongnanshan to find hermits. And we've got, let me show everybody just briefly. Next week, we will dig into Master Empty Cloud's experiences at Zhongnanshan, and we're going to share some of the footage from Ted's film. Now, this is not Master Empty Cloud, but this is Ted Berger's Shifu, who lives in a cave, in a mountain, in a maopeng on Zhongnanshan. You don't have to move your imagination very far to visualize that this is exactly how Master Xuyun lived. So we'll be digging into that next week to supplement some of the amazing stories, death-defying stories of Master Empty Cloud's adventures on Zhongnanshan, the new chapter of his life where he is indeed a hermit. Again, once again, he's a hermit. So that's coming up next week, and look forward to sharing more of our grand teacher's incredible story with all of you next week. Okay, can we dedicate merit now and see you tomorrow at 12:30 our time, 7:30 California time, 10:30 Chinese time, Taiwan time, for Master, what's his name? His name is Mega, Lord Mega, explaining to Sudana about the wheel of syllables. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. boundless light. Dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. We'll conclude by bowing to Guanyin Pusan. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Alrighty, that's going to do it for us. See you all next week. Amitofo. Bye, everybody.